Hey guys, Tim here. Big Dog Forge, how you doing? Um, I decided today I was going to get behind the anvil and the hammer and knock a couple of things out, good old-fashioned way, and I got to tell you, I had a lot of fun. It was prompted by a subscriber who sent me a comment on the tong jig video, the last one I did, the offset tong jig, and Lewis said, "You sure can jig with the best of them. I think it's best you occasionally remind people that you couldn't have created the tooling you use without mastering tong making first. Otherwise, people just might think that you're some guy cheating his way through." Well, it's always good to question people. And for you, Lewis, here's your answer. All right? Watch this, guys. I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye. Okay guys, we're going to start with 3/4 inch round mild steel. We're about 1.25 inches over. Do our set down for our jaw. Rotate it right over the edge and create the boss. And I keep coming back and dressing up, and we'll rotate it again. Let that jaw drop down. I'm using my Alex Steel square circle rounding hammer, and to move this material I use the round side. When it comes to plenishing it, I'll flip it over and use the square side of the hammer and square face of the hammer. But basically you're seeing exactly how I build tongs. These are just going to be a pair of flat bit tongs, make them to hold, you know, 1/4 inch material. That rounding hammer on the end of the thing really moves that material quite well. So we go back to the jaws and taper them down, and we round off that boss area a little bit, not too much. I kind of like to leave it square. It gives it kind of a neat look when it's done, when the tongs are all put together. Make sure you always scrub it up when you keep the scale off. And what I do is I've got a piece of 16-inch long here, and I'm going to put a tong, not on either end, but I'm using the bar as a handle. And then when I get to the other end, I'll cut it in half. I put a mark in the center of it. I'll cut it in half, and then I'll use a pair of tongs to do the other half with. The bar will be 8 inches long at that point. So with these lower heats, I flip the hammer over and I just do a lot of plenishing and straightening up, getting rid of hammer marks, rounding corners, making sure everything's nice and crisp. Square edge, round that boss off just a little bit. Keep things nice and straight. If you maintain this stuff and you watch it as you go, you don't have to go back and repair anything. You just stay on top of it, and it'll work out for you. I know I'm not giving a lot of instructional detail as to how to do this, but there are so many people out there that are awesome teachers about, you know, tongs and things like that, and you're pretty much going to see the same thing. There's only a few ways to make tongs on an anvil like this, and they all pretty much use the same methods. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of ways to make tongs, but you know, this is probably, I don't know, the most traditional, I guess. And we go back, and this is the second half. You notice I'm using some tongs to hold onto this. I cut that bar in half. Now this is a piece of 8 inch long, 3/4 inch round mild steel, the other end of that bar. I'm just roughing out the tong blank there, and then I'll go back and start refining it a little bit, taper that jaw down, square it up over the edge of the anvil, flatten the boss out, square it up. And I'm going to start working on the lower part of that transition. And what I do is I'll make that rectangular transition just all the way down just before where I want to start the reins, and keep squaring everything up. And as the temperature gets lower, I'll start plenishing it. So I'll flip my hammer over and start using the flat side to plenish things. And this is why I cut it in half. I'm one of those visual guys. I have to see both halves and compare them to make sure they're the same or close to the same. And I actually ended up making one of the jaws just a little bit longer than the other one. In the end, I had to cut it off a little bit. That's pretty typical for me, though. They're pretty easy to even up. So just dressing, a whole lot of dressing up and a whole lot of plenishing and, you know, matching up, squaring up. Taper those jaws, round off the boss again. And the key is consistency. You want to do sort of the same thing every time, both sides. There you go, you're getting close. You want to make things the same thickness, the same width, same offsets if you can. And it's a good thing to practice. It's a great way to practice your skills as far as you know, eyeballing sizes and shapes, offsets, that kind of thing. Alright, so these are the two halves, and they're pretty close. They're getting there. So I think I'm going to start working on the reins here. And scrub them up real well, that scale off. Now what I do is I use the edge of the anvil, and since I've got a 3/4 inch round and I need to take this thing down to just a little under half, I just chop the heck out of it on the edge of the anvil. And there's people out there with techniques that are much more refined than mine when it comes to this, but I find it easy. It's what I've always done. An old guy named Fred in Sugar Creek, Missouri, back in 1978. I think he was close to 80 years old at that point, who used to do this, showed it to me, and I've just been doing it ever since. It's a great way to chop that stuff up, and then it's kind of like using a cross peen hammer to spread the metal out. It moves pretty quickly that way. I'm going to keep this thing nice and square all the way down the reins till I get close to where I'm at, or where I want to be. And then I'll start knocking down those corners, turn it into an 8-sided thing, and then I'll turn it into a 16-sided thing, and then I'll round it off. And I only showed one half of this. I wanted to keep the video fairly short, and there's no sense in you guys watching me, you know, knock down 2 sets of reins. I think I showed the end of the last, you know, dressing the last part of the second tong up. So I flipped it around, heated the other end, and then that transition between the upper part of the reins. And this is where I'm turning the lower part. I just leave the upper part hanging over the far edge of the anvil, and I bring my hammer right up to the edge of that, and it starts doing a little sort of a transitional rounding up towards that square area. And I'll round those corners off in that square area a little bit. Take it down to 8 sides. And then you take it down to 16 sides. You're going to notice the half that I have in the tongs on the right there is still square. So I'll flip it around and heat that end up. Start knocking that down. And make that taper from that, you know, square upper portion of the reins by the boss. Turn it into 16 sides. I use a rounding portion of my hammer to do that, all of that stuff. It moves the metal so much quicker. And then when I get it down to a lower temperature, I'll flip it over to the flat side of the hammer and start plenishing with that. And I'm using the flat side of the hammer here to just plenish those up a little bit. And I don't mind if you hammer marks in my reins. It gives us some texture. It's fine with me. I like it that way. So I don't plenish them too much. Okay, I'm finishing up the second second rein here on the other half of the tong. Like I said, I didn't want to bore you guys with a whole drawing out of a second half of this thing. And you know, just getting ready to punch this stuff, so I'm cleaning everything up, making sure it's all nice and square. You know, plenishing here and there, and make sure the two halves match. We haven't distorted anything, and they fit together somewhat. Alright, so my hole punch acts as a center punch because it's got a little point in the middle of it, a little tip on it. So we're center punching these things so we can punch the holes out and get our rivet in. And there we go. And I only showed punching and drifting one side of this because it's, like I said, it's kind of redundant. I'm trying to keep the video a little shorter. And flip it over and drive it through the other side. And there you go. And there's your little plug. Nice. And then we'll go ahead and drift that out. And drift this out to 3/8 of an inch on my little dial hole plate. There we go. Clean that up. Straighten everything up again. And we get it over to the vise. And I always like to file the boss area that matches the other side. Give it a nice radius under the jaw. So when you put these two halves together, they don't have any interference, and the rivet actually lasts a little bit longer if you don't have variances in that thing, so you just flatten it out as best you can. Don't take too much material off, but we'll get a rivet in this thing and see how it goes. Alright. We heat them back up, work them out, and I got a little off screen here, sorry about that, but I'm just fitting them for a piece of 1/4 inch material there. I'm going to clean that rivet up, a little ball peen on both sides. And work them out. You pretty much do all that in one heat. After you get the rivet in, you heat up the upper part of the jaws. Alright, so I did take it to the bandsaw, cut that long jaw off, and just clean it up with a soft disc on the grinder here a little bit. Break those corners a little, make them nice and smooth. Alright, let's get a finish on this thing. And just warm it up in the forge a little bit and rub some beeswax on it. Wipe it down. Let it cool. There you go. There's your 1/4 inch flat bit tongs. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, guys. Okay guys, there you go. I haven't done that in a while. I thought maybe my arm would be all worn out when I got done, but I gotta tell you, just as good as ever. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be putting up another video soon about the sawmill blades, and I appreciate all the comments about that. You guys were really helpful. So I got something for you next video. Alright, thanks guys. Be safe. Take care. Bye.